Alright, so once again, I'm filming this before Christmas, so I haven't seen some films like Wicked, Sonic 3, Juror Number 2. Here are the films that I think you should see, but as for the actual list of honorable mentions...
Don't Move tense and manages to get a lot out of a very simple concept, all with a great lead performance by a woman who can do nothing but blink. VHS Beyond. Like the rest, some of the segments are better than others, but they all have some good spooks, creative filmmaking, and fun thrills. Orion and the Dark. Cute and surprisingly meta, that's also just a good friendship story. Monkey Man. Basically Indian John Wick with balls to the wall action that gets freaking brutal. Am I Okay? A story about a woman in her 30s realizing she might not actually be straight. I think you can see why I relate to that. A Quiet Place Day 1. Not quite up to the level of the first two, but still has a lot of good suspense and some great acting. If. A movie about imagination with a lot of actual imagination. Creative filmmaking and a really sweet ending that made it feel like some of the movies I grew up with. And finally, It's What's Inside. This is one of the most confusing movies I've seen in years, but I did enjoy trying to figure it out, even if I needed a little help.
And that's it for honorable mentions. We're counting down.
Gotta get your hands dirty.
My top 10 favorite movies of 2024. Number 10.
So over the past few years, I've been complaining about the bad feminist movie, but don't think I'm opposed to them on principle.
He believes you. It's a miracle.
This and Poor Things show that you can make a movie in which all the male characters are evil scumbags and still be good.
I swear I had never heard of Sydney Sweeney until this year when she was suddenly everywhere, and my first experience of her acting was in Madam Web, which was not a very good first impression, but she is actually really damn good in this movie. She does a fantastic job as a woman who clearly has a lot of faith in God and the church, but still skeptical enough when things start going weird. She's smart too. There's a scene where she figures out a way to try and escape by faking a miscarriage that even managed to fool me until it was revealed. Alvaro Morte, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, also deserves a lot of credit as Father Tedeschi. He comes across so charming and likable, but you can tell there is something a little sinister behind it. Director Michael Moen is able to build mystery and suspense and still keep the movie at only an hour and a half. And it's also a surprisingly gory movie. I didn't know there was gonna be so much blood before I watched it, but I was pleasantly surprised.
And again, this is a really good feminist movie that made me identify with the main character.
I was rooting for her, and I empathized with how scared she was and confused she was. And there's themes about bodily autonomy and using power over those below you. And it also might have my favorite ending of the year with a long shot where Sweeney gives a performance so good, she should get an Oscar nomination for that scene alone. It's not gonna be for everyone, especially if you're squeamish, but it's a really good horror movie with a fantastic lead performance.
Gotta get your hands dirty.
Number 9.
Okay, I enjoyed Moana 2 overall, but why did the direct-to-Disney Plus movies have more memorable music?
New exciting space station. Space is great, space is fun. What's more fun than fun? Nothing!
Yes, I'm putting the Big City Greens movie on this list and you can't stop me.
I laughed more in this movie than in any other comedy I saw this year, and I laughed hard. It has so many jokes, some obvious, some so subtle you might miss them on first viewing. This movie is a great comedy, but it's also a really good family adventure movie. The songs are a lot of fun, the plot is ridiculous but still gripping, and you don't really need to have seen the show. They give you enough information, and the film mostly focuses on broad enough themes like family and self-doubt. Well, once again, a cartoon adaptation of a show with a wide ensemble doesn't include most of them or even give them cameos, but they do give Nancy and Gloria something to do, and it manages to get pretty emotional at times. There are a few points that get pretty heavy. I actually started to form some tears near the end. I gasped a few times, I loved the villain and how petty she was, and it managed to sneak sneak in some commentary on CEOs and corporations' lack of respect for human life. It's not very subtle, but somehow still more subtle than Don't Look Up. And I like the new characters like Colleen and Robot Leg. Yeah, I know it's weird to put a direct-to-TV movie in my top 10, but this really was one of the most fun movies I saw this year. And in terms of the big damn movie trope, this is probably one of my favorites. Definitely one of the best Disney ones, maybe even beating Wizards of Waverly Place and Phineas and Ferb.
And yeah, if you count this as a DCOM, this would have been number 1 in that list I made last year.
Keep on dancing at the Pink Pony Club, Pink Pony Club. Gotta get your hands dirty.
Number 8.
Alright, so I originally didn't have this in my top 10, but whereas a bunch of other movies have faded from my memory, this one stuck in there.
Let me introduce you to the shareholders. They have been dying to meet you.
Well, that movie was something, but it is one of the better feminist movies of recent years, and also a better version of Death Becomes Her. Don't get me wrong, the movie is about as subtle as a brick to the face. If you watch this and don't realize what it's trying to say, you're either incredibly ignorant or incredibly dumb. But I'm one of those people who kind of likes my satire to be as painfully obvious as possible. As I'm sure you know, the movie is about body dysmorphia and the way society fetishizes youth and beauty, especially for women. It conveys those themes in such a creative way. I can safely say that I did not know where this movie was going. Each new act brought something surprising, and while some of the character decisions were a bit dumb, I thought for a second what I would do in this situation and realized maybe we're all a bit dumb. I certainly could see myself wanting to go back to looking younger, and I'm only 31 years old. The two lead performances from Debbie Moore and Margaret Qualley were fantastic, the makeup work is phenomenal, and there's certainly some creative camera work and editing.
I don't think I've ever seen a movie where he cut from someone's ass to someone else's ass, but transitions need to be in more things.
The sound design is eerie, and it's not afraid to be gross. Do not eat anything while watching this, or plan to eat anything right after. And the best praise I can give it is that it did not feel its length. When I saw this was 2 hours and 20 minutes long, I actually said out loud, "Oh, come on," and almost considered not watching it because I'm tired of movies being so damn long when they don't need to be that long. But this movie earns its runtime. There are very few slow moments. It's not a movie for everyone. It's kind of similar to Poor Things from last year, and I could see a lot of it turning people off, but something about it really worked for me. And while so many other films fade from my memory, this one I think will stick in there. Number 7. I did not know what to expect from this. The only reason I even really watched it was because Shyamalan produced it. And I say this as someone who liked The Watchers and Trap. This is the best film he was involved in this year. This movie is best going in blind, but let's just say there are different stories told around a supernatural lake. And that's all I really want to say. As soon as I figured out what was happening, I actually did the whole, "Oh, that's what's happening," while pointing at the TV. Like, I actually did that. And working out this puzzle and how the characters are interacting with the lake's supernatural abilities kept me guessing. I did like the characters, the acting is pretty good, and it looked cool, but this mostly gets on here because of the mystery, and I really don't want to spoil anymore, so I have to keep this one short. If you have a Max subscription, or even just want to do a free trial, this is one I would check out. Number 6.
Let's fucking go. Get your spectral sock out, nerds. It's gonna get good.
This is the movie we just needed. Not really the best, obviously, but in a year of such polarizing views and so much arguing, the world needed a movie that was a fun, crowd-pleasing popcorn flick. And man, did this movie give the fan service.
Which I know some people complain about. I never have been one of them. It was a tough year. Let people have their pandering.
It is so filled with characters from previous X-Men and Marvel movies. Some of them I didn't even know, but for the ones I did, I really appreciated, especially since some of them didn't come from the most beloved properties, or at least eventually fell into that. But even though there is plenty of fan service here, the main plot is still Deadpool. It feels like Deadpool, reminds me why I like the other two movies. He's funny, Ryan Reynolds is insanely charming, and I love all the meta humor. It goes for everything, from Disney buying Fox to the MCU currently being at maybe not its most beloved point, to mocking how so many movies are too damn long now. And yet this movie keeps it at a solid 2 hours. I love seeing Wade and Logan together, and it does manage to have heart. It's heart in its own Deadpool way, but it does have it. The action is fun, and I like that even though it's a big budget movie that's basically a crossover of like 12 different franchises, it feels a little low-key. It doesn't seem like it's trying to be the Avengers or even No Way Home. It still has that gritty Deadpool feel. My only real problem was the villains. There's two, and it kinda keeps flip-flopping between which one is the main one. That left me feeling a little confused on who I was supposed to be rooting for. But this was just a good, fun movie, and at a time where many seem to be getting sick of comic book movies, it's great when one comes along to show they can still surprise you. Number 5. I really don't have too much to say about this one. I really only need one word to describe this movie. Enthralling. It was a movie that got my blood pumping, made me want to exercise, just a very exciting film. It's not quite Fury Road, which was pretty much a non-stop chase scene. This does have some slower moments, but even those were pretty fun. Despite Anya Taylor-Joy being top billed, she doesn't actually come in till about an hour, most of the first act focusing on her as a young girl, and I actually kind of like that stuff a bit more than when she grew up. I loved Chris Hemsworth and how over the top he was. I mean, for the love of God, his name was Dementus. I love the way it's directed, the editing is quick, there's some creative shots that feel like the style of a teenager, and I mean that in the best possible way. They feel energetic and experimental in that way you do when you're first testing out how to shoot. The whole film just has this energy that a lot of films just don't, past or present. But again, it still manages to create character and have themes and look beautiful despite being set in the desert. All with fantastic acting, including from Taylor-Joy, who doesn't have many lines and is able to convey so much with just her eyes. And once again, despite being very long, did not feel it. And yeah, that's all I got. Next number.
Everybody at the bar getting tipsy.
Gotta get your hands dirty.
Number 4.
Blumhouse didn't seem to have a very good year. Night Swim only barely missed my worst list. Imaginary was not terrible, but not memorable either. And I haven't seen Afraid, but reviews weren't great. But they did manage one great film.
God, there's a doctor in the house. I'm not a doctor. What?
Wait, what, didn't you say you were a doctor?
Did I? In Italy, you...
No, I have not seen the original Dutch film from a couple years ago. And yes, I know they changed the ending and the original film's writer hated that, but frankly, knowing how the original film ends, I'm not sure I'd want to see that one. This film, however, I'm glad I saw, and I was surprised how much I liked it given that it was almost 2 hours long. I remember when I saw that, I got a bit annoyed that what should be a simple thriller like this was longer than 90 minutes, but it earned that runtime. We actually get a pretty lengthy backstory on how all these people met and who they are, and then just hanging out. The first hour, 45 minutes, you're just kind of watching these people on vacation and hanging out the farmhouse. But through all that, there is this general feeling of uncomfortableness, mostly coming from James McAvoy, who knocks it out of the fucking park. I'd say this ranks right up there as one of his best performances alongside Split. He's super charming and kind, but there is a passive aggressiveness to a lot of the stuff he does. He's always doing things that push boundaries, like pushing the vegetarian wife to eat meat, but it lures you into thinking maybe he's just a little awkward or doesn't fully understand his actions. Through half the movie, I even wonder what was the deal.
But then it gives us a twist, and I gasped.
everything after that twist is so freaking tense and uncomfortable, and yet everyone feels genuine, and while I've heard some say that the family's decisions were dumb, I actually disagree. At least when you remember that you don't know what these people are capable of. I was clenched up during the last act of the movie, and personally, I love the ending. Even if you do prefer the original's end, I think they both can be used to show differences in how people from separate cultures would react to this situation, and you can have your own choose your own adventure. I thought this was a great thriller and probably my favorite Blumhouse movie since The Invisible Man.
But it won't start out till I touch you. Gotta get your hands dirty.
Number 3.
Speak.
You know who I am, Doctor.
Please.
Man, I love that found footage is back.
I did not know what to expect from this, but the quick version, it's about a late night host in 1977 who invites a supposedly possessed girl on his show, along with a few other guests to try and debunk her. The entire thing is filmed like a show from 1977. The lighting, camera, graphics, even down to being in 4:3 aspect ratio, it all immerses you into this show, with a few little behind the scenes shots for the commercial breaks. For about 70% of the time, I totally could have believed this was a real broadcast from back then, until it gets a little special effects heavy in the last act, but even that was still pretty fun. The whole movie is a blast, with a mystery going on about if this girl is actually possessed. Sometimes you think she has to be, but then something comes along that shows there may be a logical explanation. David Dastmalchian is great as the lead. He's charismatic, funny, and you could tell how hard he's trying to stay calm, even when terrifying stuff is happening. He would actually make a really good late night host. He is that charming. And he could tell even before the scary stuff happens that he's feeling a little depressed because his show might get canceled, even when he's in front of the audience cracking jokes. And there's a bit of a mystery around his backstory that I did kind of guess, but it still led to a pretty good finale. There's tension, laughs, fantastic production design. In a year where there are a lot of really good horror and thriller movies, this was my favorite. It's a perfect movie to watch around the Halloween season. You may not care for some parts of the third act, that's where it goes a little bit over the top, but I thought it was a lot of fun.
And one more thing, this has one of the most hateable characters of the year, and his comeuppance was really satisfying. If you know, you know.
Gotta get your hands dirty.
Number 2.
Searching.
Anything yet?
No.
Just have a little fun for once.
This movie was a delight. It's just such a damn likable, charming, and very sweet film that is both simple and complex. What the hell do I mean by that? Well, the story itself is pretty much as simple as you can get. It's just a small story about a robot making friends with animals and learning to be more human. We've seen that in Iron Giant and WALL-E. But the themes of the movie are both varied and complex. It deals with parenting, humanity, nature, science, family, lessons about working through the hard times to improve yourself and to use your weaknesses as a strength. This is a surprisingly deep film. That's what I love about Chris Sanders, who also did Lilo and Stitch, How to Train Your Dragon, and The Croods. He gives a simple and, let's be honest here, kind of cliche story, but packs it with themes that make it feel fresh and gives heart. This movie has heart as big as an elephant. I love these characters. I loved Roz, and man, Lupita Nyong'o gives a phenomenal performance. I legit forgot that was her until the movie was over. I loved Fink and Bright Bill and all the other little creatures and how they all work together.
Also, this movie has a surprisingly dark sense of humor that I didn't expect.
Like, this felt like a PG movie from the 80s. It earns it. There are some very aggressive moments, the animation is gorgeous, the music is fantastic. Like, I want to buy this soundtrack and listen to some of the songs at the gym to hype myself up. This movie is just so damn lovable. I laughed, I cried, I worried, and I ended it with a big goofy grin on my face. In fact, if I have a nitpick, I think it could have been a little longer, like maybe an extra montage or two to really show the bond between the three leads. But the fact that they still managed to do that much in an hour and 40 minutes makes this easily in my top 5 DreamWorks movies. Maybe top 3. number 1.
It's Inside Out 2.
You make Riley happy. Sadness makes her sad. Fear protects her from the scary stuff she can see. And my job is to protect her from the scary stuff she can't see. I plan for the future.
This and Wild Robot were really close. In fact, don't be surprised if when I do my favorite movies of the 2020s, that these two are tied. But I felt like I needed to place one above the other and decided on this. If you remember, the first movie was my favorite film of 2015, and I guess it makes sense for both these films to top the list of the bookends of my quarter-life crisis. Everything that was great about the first movie is back here. Some things even better. While the first film does have some good jokes, this movie is hilarious. Both me and the audience were laughing our asses off. It has so much creativity with the ways it shows how our emotions and memories help form our beliefs. And all the old characters are just as fun and likable as ever. I loved Joy and Sadness and Riley and was fully invested in all of their stories. But I also love the new characters, with my favorite of course being Anxiety.
And that's because I know that that little brat is the one controlling the panel in my head.
I really appreciated that they didn't make her a villain. She's the antagonist, but she's not bad. That's what I love about these, how they show that the emotions that we normally think are bad still have their place, just as long as we don't let them take over everything. And in a year where there seemed to be a lot of doomerism going on, let's just say that Joy's little speech she gives to the others about their complaining really resonated with me. I love this film. I know some might get annoyed for me putting it above The Wild Robot, and again, they were super close. And I will be fine with either winning Best Animated Film, but this one just hit me a little bit more.
Well, we're about to enter 2025. We'll officially be halfway through the decade. Again, I hope next year is good for you, and I certainly hope it's good for me. So if you watch them, I'll see you tomorrow for my final weigh-in of the year, and if not, I'll see you in 2025. Bye.
We can rise, we will rise, we will rise, we will go beyond. Baby, you're delusional, thinking you could ever find something that's as beautiful, someone with a love like mine.
Blumhouse didn't seem to have a very good year. Fuck you.